All right, well, it feels like just yesterday that we were talking about Bungie having these massive layoffs, and it was brutal when this news hit. They laid off hundreds of people, and unfortunately, this allegedly was always going to happen, whether or not the final shape, the latest addition DLC to Destiny 2 was successful or not. This article from PC Gamer says Bungie was reportedly going to pull the trigger on layoffs regardless of the final shape's success due to leadership under-delivering on financial promises to Sony. And you know, we've seen this so much now in the last 6 months to a year with Sony and Xbox after they bought up all these different studios in a video games arms race of sorts. And then they just had to start cutting back on costs because they were overspending, the studios were underperforming, the games weren't making as much money as they were hoping, there's too much bloat, too much wasted money, too much terrible spending, and now they're cutting back. And of course, they laid off 220 employees, and that is just the beginning. It is going to get worse, guys. The video game industry is essentially in a free fall at this point, but it doesn't stop here. So Bungie is now banking on this new game, Marathon, that I've heard very little about. I've heard the name. I know it's floating around out there in the ether. I've heard about it roughly. I guess it's like an extraction shooter or something. But now there's reports from Jason Schreier, who I know is not necessarily, he's not somebody that most of us tend to like going to for our news, but once in a while these guys actually get a good scoop. And from GamerRanks here, it says Jason Schreier says sentiment around Marathon is not great and compares it to Suicide Squad. Now, that's a strange comparison, I know, because they're two completely different types of games. However, there's a very valid reason that he compares these two, and you'll see in this article right here. It says, the future now all depends on Valorant's former director, Joe Ziegler. Bloomberg reporter Jason Schreier has shared some surprising new revelations about Bungie's next big title, Marathon. He was a guest on the latest episode of the Friends Per Second podcast hosted by YouTuber SkillUp to talk about all things Bungie. He started opening up when co-host Lucy James asked him point blank what he heard about the game. Jason started off on a dreadful note saying, "Not great from what I've heard. There's a reason it was planned for this year and slipped an entire year. People I've been talking to have been pessimistic about it even hitting its current planned deadline, but we'll see. I don't know exactly when that is, sometime in 2025, I'm not sure. The sentiment I've heard is not great around it, at least as of a few months ago." Later in the conversation, Jason pointed out that Marathon had a big leadership shakeup as of last April. Their director, Christopher Barrett, left Bungie. Carrie Gusco was Marathon's executive producer and became senior director of development before she also left last April. We should be clear here that Jason has to be citing publicly available information, since this would be quite the big issue if Bungie kept it under wraps and it was all being revealed for the first time. Well, I mean, obviously, this is something that they probably know of in the industry. For those curious, Bungie has assigned Joe Ziegler to be the current director at Marathon. He joined the studio all the way back in 2022 and was previously the game director for Riot Games' Valorant. Joe has allegedly already changed Marathon to be a combination of a hero shooter and an extraction shooter. Oh boy. Hero shooters and extraction shooters. Yeah, let's just keep reading. Jason himself made an interesting comparison to Marathon and not Valorant, but Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. Jason describes the development of Suicide Squad as a situation where they started when live service was the hot new thing and couldn't decide to cancel the project because of endless delays and the sunk cost fallacy. Rocksteady and Warner Bros. Games were sure that the game was going to be received well, that they refused to turn back, and that's why Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is where it is now. Jason then says this, "I'm worried about Marathon being in a similar situation where it's been in development for a while. It entered development when extraction shooters were super hot. I don't know if that's the case anymore." I would argue, I have about a half dozen extraction shooters on my PC and I don't play any of them, so I don't know, I'm not the target audience for these. I don't have all the time in the world to sink into extraction shooters as much as I enjoy them. But I do think that there is a oversaturation of the market. Hell, I played a couple of different betas for extraction shooters that both games are no longer being released. So, sorry, they weren't betas, they were alphas and early access shit or whatever. And now he goes on to say, and now because they've committed so much money and because it was the project that was the furthest along, as opposed to all other incubation bets, they're really putting a lot into it, and I'm just not sure there's much of a chance that it will be successful. Jason ends this little thread of conversation by revealing he also didn't believe Helldivers 2 was going to be successful, and he felt he was proven wrong there. Well, okay, Helldivers 2 just recently released a statement trying to win back some of their players because people are revolting on that game. So maybe it is an actual a good comparison for Helldivers 2, because Helldivers 2 is bleeding players left and right. But again, he compared it to Suicide Squad, and why that's important is, again, a game that is a live service, a game that should never have been required to be live service. You should have always been able to play it offline. And it caused Warner Brothers to lose 41% of their revenue just because of the cost and the sheer massive scale of this game that they wasted all this money on. A game that was so terrible, they even gave it away for free on Amazon Prime Day. And of course, over here on Concord, another one that they've referenced again as hero shooters that haven't done well, the open beta for Concord is notoriously bad because of the fact that the players just abandoned this thing left and right. Nobody wanted to play this game even for free. And again, comparing this to Marathon, if you're going with the hero shooter route, I think the market's oversaturated. If you look at games like Valorant, Apex Legends, any number of these games, there are so many of them, and the lines between them are being so heavily blurred that at this point, it doesn't seem like there's there's very little difference between them. Like if you've seen one, you've seen the rest of them at this point. Again, another game that lost money, Alan Wake 2, a game that decided to go in the more, let's say, woke direction, and has yet to recover its costs. And let's not forget about Skull and Bones, a game that was so terrible that they were literally letting you buy it for $10 physical at Best Buy. Again, it was only for one day, but still, you'll see these deals again. So I have no hope for this game. I think so many of these games, especially when you start comparing them to Suicide Squad and the epic failure that it was, are just a bloated disaster waiting to happen. And unfortunately, they spend so much money on these games with no accountability whatsoever as far as like how they spend their money, what their target audience is, what the intent behind the game is. And remember, when they start switching directors and creative vision for these games, they no longer have a cohesive vision for what they want to put out there, and you get too many cooks in the kitchen, and disaster inevitably, ensues. So I'm gonna leave it right there, guys. Let me know what you think about all this. Again, this is a game that I, up until recently, had very little knowledge about, and to be honest, I don't think there has like much chance of it being successful, but let me know what you think, and I will catch you on the next one. Alright, and if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching the video. Thank you for being here. I do have two channels, Minimal Effort Podcast, as well as my gaming channel. I do have a Twitch and Kick for my gaming channel. We do live streams over there occasionally, maybe once a week. And then if you are in the market for a new PC, make sure to check out Meta PCs. Click the link I have down below. Use code TBO at checkout for a special discount. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.